Shall we just see how we go? Yeah.
Are there any GMs that we need to wait for? Okay, all right. No. Yeah, okay, good.
But we do need to wait for Stephen. Stephen's coming down.
Okay, we won't be on to him anyway for a wee while. He's tenure monitoring, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you everyone. I'll call the, if you just close your mouth, Mark, as you walk in. The largest yawn I've ever seen in my life. Flies running around.
It's my resting space.
Okay, I call the meeting of the Finance Committee on the Tuesday the 28th of August 2018 open. I have an apology from Councillor Southgate. I'll move. Mallet, Cassison, those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. Like to... Oh, so you have got apologies from them, ever?
Like this.
Okay, beg your pardon.
Councillor McPherson and the Deputy Mayor.
And Taylor.
Okay, so we also have latenesses for the Deputy Mayor, Jeff Taylor. Who else? Dave McPherson. Okay. Can someone just tell me how? Just read the names off the things that are over there, and we'll put an apology for all of those people.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor McPherson, Councillor Southgate.
Yeah, we did, Paula.
And Councillor Taylor.
Okay. James, are you happy to accept all those apologies as well? Okay. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Well, confirmation of the agenda. Just a couple of small changes. There is a verbal update. Verbal update on the in the confidential part of the agenda, which is I can't tell you any more than that about the watertight buildings, and as a consequence of that, I think we'll move the watertight buildings item, which is item 10 in the open agenda, to the end of the open agenda, so the two items can run somewhat concurrently. Other than that, the agenda is as distributed. I'll move. Bunting, Mallet, Bunting, those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Thank you. We don't have any, do we have any declarations of interest? Thank you. I understand there are no public forum submitters, so we'll move on from that. Okay, item number 5, confirmation of the Finance Committee meeting open minutes of the 22nd of May 2018. Are there any questions or queries? Just going to second. Oh, you're going to move? Okay. I'll move, and James can second the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of May 2018. Those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Item 6, Hamilton Garden Development Contract, page 12 of your agenda. Helen and Peter.
Good morning, Chair and elected members. This report deals with two matters relating to Hamilton Gardens. So firstly, we're seeking approval for an increase to the contract with Marine Services for the jetty upgrade. So this work was undertaken in the last financial year, and it was originally approved under CE delegation. At the time, there was some uncertainty around the costs for crane hire, as there were quite a number of unknowns with that contract. It was a direct appointment because it is a very specialist and unique area, and very few of those services available. Costs did increase due to needing to move the location of the crane work from Grantham Street. There was some urgent works required on the site, and we had to move the crane down to Puketi. So that increased the overall contract cost, and the final price does require approval from Council.
Helen, can I just ask you on that?
Yes.
Why, if one of the costs was because of work, the crane had to get moved for somewhere in Puketi, why isn't that cost allocated to the Puketi project as opposed to the jetty project?
It was they needed the crane to put the pontoons in for the jetty, It was originally going to be at Grantham Street, but just a week before the job was to be done, they discovered there was a structural problem there. So instead of, and it was limited to a 4-ton crane, we needed 100.
On the same project, though?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So
It was
that-
about
that-
the location where the cranes were actually located. So the work was on the Hamilton Gardens jetty, but the cranes were located and moved between. So that was their base where they worked from.
And there were only 2 other sites they could put them in, at Puketi and Mercer. So they managed to put it in at Mercer, but they needed a 400-ton
So when you say put
crane.
them in, do you mean put them and
Into the river.
Move down?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I understand, sorry. Yeah. I thought you meant the cranes are working at Puketi.
No, just to...
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So the second matter relates to the targeted rates for the gardens development. So, and I'm talking about the existing project, so the project between 2015-16 and final year in 2017-18. So we collected a targeted rate over 4 years for that project, and it was kept in a reserve. The project was totaled 7.2 million, and it was funded, as you're aware, by a mix of rates, donations and external funding. So external funding is often tagged to particular components of a project, and it's required usually by funders to be spent within a certain time frame. The targeted rate component of the project was much more flexible, and that was held in reserve and then drawn down as it was needed. So once we spent, so we'd spend the external funding first as agreed with our with the funder, and then we'd draw down on the Hamilton Gardens reserve as it was needed. So at the end of last financial year, there is a total of $440,000 remaining in that reserve. A total of 7 million has been spent on the project. The total is 7.2 million, and we're requesting approval to defer 200,000 for works that are still required for that specific project. However, there is a total of $440,000 remaining in the reserve. So that's a surplus amount over and above the total project cost of $240,000. So the reason that surplus amount is in the reserve is because we had, there's a minor underspend in the project. There's some interest in there that the reserve earned, and also there were additional funds raised by the Friends of the Gardens and the Hamilton Trust last year. So we're requesting that the full $440,000 that is in the reserve is deferred into this financial year, that $200,000 of that is spent to complete the current project, and that the surplus $240,000 is allocated to the new project. And specifically, we're requesting that that is allocated to the Arrival Information Centre. Hopefully that's clear. Peter and I are here to answer questions.
Angela.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thanks, Peter and Helen, for the report. The $240,000 for the upgrade to the Information Centre / Arrival Centre, what's the overall budget for the Arrival? This is new, we're just calling it Arrival Centre now, so what's the overall budget for that?
The estimated sum was 900,000. Now more work is being done. It seems to need more. There's services underneath, and it's also making the retail area bigger. And it's being designed so that if the council at any stage choose to have paid entry, it's easily done without major modification.
Okay, but this is not an increase required. It's got nothing to do with the idea that we're some have been talking about relocating eyesight at any point.
That doesn't have any impact.
It's not impact, okay. And so is the jetty finished and open now?
Yes.
It is, okay, thank you.
Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just follow-on question. The Arrival Centre upgrade, is that currently already budgeted in the 18-19 year?
Yes.
So all we're doing is spending the excess from the $7.2 million project in this current year without, yeah. So we'll end up, no, we won't end up being under budget because we're spending it on an extra, on extras to make the Arrival Centre better than we had originally planned. Thank you.
Ryan.
Thanks. Just to query, obviously the marine services was over the initial budget with the crane, extra cranes, etc. But you've said it still was within the original budget scope. Is that right? So it's you're still sort of within the original allocated budget.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Mark?
Thank you. The $100,000 of in-kind work from Foster's, so in-kind, is it donated basically, is it?
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's cool. That's all I've got actually, thank you.
Okay, are there any further discussions?
There is
Helen wants to say something.
just one other matter in the deferral report, which comes later. The amount that's been requested to defer, there is a error there. It says 424,000, but the amount is actually 440,000, which
Okay,
is
yes, that's
stated
right.
in this report.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move the staff recommendation. Sorry, was that you, Angela? Yep. Mallet, O'Leary. Those in favour, those against. Anyone against? Carried. Carried unanimously. Thank you. You want me to say the carried unanimously, don't you, for the camera? Yeah. Okay, we'll now move on to item 7, 10-year monitoring report, page 15. G'day, Stephen.
Mr Chair. Good morning, Mr Chair, elected members. Apologies for Russell, who wrote the report. He's off overseas, which has meant that I'm here today to cast some fresh eyes on this final monitoring report for 2015.
You mean you haven't read it yet?
2015-25 10-year plan. I have had a read of it, and I do have an overview of it. And if I can read this overview, but while I've been intimately involved with your 10-year plan, I haven't been intimately involved with the operations in the last 12 months. So I will need some assistance on some of the detailed questions. This report looks back at the past year, comparing actual financial performance with the annual plan budget. It is the second to last look at the 2017-18 results. The draft annual report has been workshopped at the Audit and Risk Committee and is currently with the auditors. It will go back to the Audit and Risk Committee formally before being recommended to Council in October.
Stephen, sorry, just to interrupt. The figures in this are exactly the same as what we saw in the draft annual report at the workshop, which was to go to the audit. Is that correct?
David's nodding yes. Because I haven't read,
so they're the same things.
I haven't read that report.
Yeah. A different presentation of that stuff, but it's the same, same figures here.
At this point, we do not expect any matters in this report to be materially inconsistent with the annual report.
Should have waited for you to say that, shouldn't I?
So what is this report telling us? It shows our financial performance is better than budgeted, whether we measure it by the accounting result or by one of the balancing the books measures. The accounting result shows a better than budget surplus of 52.8 million. Using the government balancing the books measure, it's better than budgeted by 7.2 million. And using the 2015 measure, which is the measure in the last 10-year plan, it is 20.4 million better than budgeted. Those numbers are all in the report. Additionally, the 2018 measure, which we have been talking about now for the last 6 months or so, it is better than budgeted by $2 million. So this is all positive. However, we are still borrowing to fund everyday costs. This positive position comes about largely due to higher revenue. In the traditional accounting result, it comes from higher DC's invested assets. a story we're used to hearing. But if we go to the 2018 measure, we strip out all those big items and we find we've still exceeded budget with better than expected revenue from activities of $4 million. Alongside that, we have a bonus $4.4 million from the NZTA for the LED lighting subsidy, which is treated as a renewal. So that's an exceptional item that we couldn't have budgeted for. Interest income and interest paid result in a favourable benefit to budget of $3 million. In part, this comes about because of the capital program and the deferral. But as previously advised, when we do our budgets, the interest expense is reduced to allow for this. So it's only part of that story. Looking at the report on page 34, on paragraph 34, page 18, there's a table that lists the unders and overs, and we see that we have higher than budgeted expenses to offset some of the gains in the revenue. Some of this should not be a surprise, given that the 10-year plan was developed around building budgets that could sustainably maintain service levels, meaning more resources and maintenance of spending is required. The biggest item here is the increase of $4.4 million in administration cost line. This is made up of many things. The large items, of which are explained in the activity reports, and include some things that are on risk and opportunities. For example, $250,000 for the Waikato Regional Theatre, $150,000 for Clarence Street Theatre, earthquake strengthening. There's $860,000 for future-proof and plan changes, as explained in the planning activity. There's $919,000 for rubbish and recycling as a result of an increase in the post-closure costs, which was an item that was raised by audit about a year ago, and higher levies in trade waste and waste minimisation. There's $425,000 in transport for on-street parking court fees and doubtful debts, and $624,000 in stormwater, as explained in the activity. So administration costs is made up of many very different items. The Treasury report shows that we're better than budgeted debt by $62 million. Largely, this is because we've got $50 million more cash than budgeted. And this cash has come from an additional $15 million in DCs and $32 million of deferred CapEx. So that takes us to the capital report. And if we have a look at page 30, paragraph 43, and looking at the two numbers at the end, we had a budget of $133 million, and we spent $102 million. And as a result of that, we have a deferment. The deferment of $32 million is $5 million less than the previous year, and the previous year's deferment was included in the $133 million budget. If you have a look at the table at the top of page 20, which I think is paragraph 49, but top of page 20, you'll see that much of the deferment is under contract and underway. So it's not like nothing's happened on these items. The deferment means $32 million will get added to the $222 million capital program for this year, taking that program's budget to $254 million. The deferment will have no significant effect on our forecast debt to revenue ratio, as when we did the budgeting we allowed for this. So in conclusion, it is my opinion that financial results should be seen very positively, given the challenging growth environment the city has faced and the constrained budgets that were in place for last year. The result is another step in the right direction of improved financial governance for the city. Mr. Chairman, as we look forward to the new budget and the challenges that go with that, I recommend the committee receive this report and approve the capital deferment as recommended.
Thanks, Stephen. I have some questions. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Stephen, I just want to drill in a little bit on the rubbish and recycling item you've got there, which is actually on page 49 of our reports. Can you explain that to me? Because I run the Waste and Recycling Committee, and this was actually quite a surprise to me. In particular, the 919 with regards to the additional trade waste charges at Rototuna and Horotū, which are both closed. Where's that money being spent? What's happening?
I can't explain that.
Anybody?
So the first one was actually referring to the aftercare, landfill aftercare provision, which is an
Murray,
obligation.
just put your, get a bit closer to that, or maybe sit next to Stephen, or, yeah.
I can explain the aftercare part.
So sorry?
I can explain the aftercare part.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, let Stephen do that. But in terms of the trade waste at the closed landfills continue to create leachate that needs to be discharged to our wastewater system. Yeah. At the beginning of last financial year, it was extremely wet, and that increased the amount of leachate that was actually produced at those sites that had to be discharged, and that is the reason why there is increased trade waste costs for those two sites.
So physically, what does that actually look like? We actually have to put more machinery in there, or?
No, we just have to pump more leachate out to the wastewater treatment plant to be treated. So.
All right, thank you. And Stephen, you mentioned the levy had gone up. The waste levy had gone up. I think I heard you say that. I need to pull you up on that one there because it hasn't.
I think that was referring to the landfill aftercare provision, which has increased based on the fact that we have identified increased maintenance requirements for that site. So closed landfills are really complex underground assets, and they've been there for a number of years. And so as we do more and more condition assessment, we become more familiar with what, or better understanding of what maintenance is required moving forward, and that increases the landfill aftercare provision.
So as we move into other landfills, it won't be our cost anyway, will it?
No, it's only the landfills that we own, which is fall within Hamilton.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
So just on that landfill care provision, that's us charging ourselves. That's us making that's nothing to do with money going out of the organisation to another entity.
It's future money that will go out.
Yeah, it's us making allowance for expenditure we think we're going to have to make in the future to do stuff, I think.
Yeah, and the issue that arose with the audit of the annual report last year, which was after the annual plan was adopted, so the annual plan budget couldn't be adjusted for it, which is why there was a variance. So in addition to the changes in costs, there were a lot of issues around how we were discounting that and the interest rates we were using to discount it.
Oh, I see.
And that was part of the annual report discussion last year, and flows through.
So next year, even if it is a wetter year, the variance should be less because we've now got that in the system.
The wetter year was to do with trade waste charges, not the landfill provision. So two different issues.
We took a hit, basically, to get it on track.
For the post-closure provision, yes. And the reason I'm familiar with that was because during the budgeting process for the 10-year plan, we did a lot of work to get that right.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Murray.
Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stephen, for the detailed explanation around the report. Just a couple of queries. One, you mentioned about the significant increase in administration costs, and in that you mentioned about the grants that we'd already made for the Waikato Regional Theatre. The payments that we've already made in respect to the Regional Theatre, is that on account of the grant money that is in the 10-year plan, or is this an amount over and above? In the sense I'm saying, are we still committed to the 25 million, or is the 25 million to be reduced by the payments that have and will already be made when the grant is ultimately approved?
Yes, if I could just respond to that through the chair, that money will be deducted from our final grant.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned also, Stephen, that we're borrowing to meet day-to-day costs. So you mentioned in your address. Where in the report is there evidence to show that we've actually borrowed amounts to fund day-to-day operation expenses?
It's not in the report. It's as a result of applying the 2018 balancing the books measure, and that comes in at a deficit. And that's our measure of borrowing for everyday costs.
Okay.
So
So what is that deficit? Because that's not reported in here either.
Yeah, so it's about 5.5 million.
5.5, okay. Right. Okay, thank you.
Siggy.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Look on page 38, economic development, and I was just looking at the professional costs, and yes, it is explained because it comes from the HIF fund and the whole business case we had to put up to get the HIF fund. I just wondered, I mean, the government spends mega bucks on setting up these funds, and then we have to spend a whole lot of money on getting a crumb of the fund. Is there any, and that's probably not to you, is there any way we can ask the government to give us some money to set up, to help us with these, getting to the fund?
Who wants to have a go at that?
I suppose the government would just wants a business, some sort of, to see there's been some analysis or some work to make sure the thing's going to work.
Yeah. I know that, I understand that, but, they expect us to do a whole lot of work which is in a way fair enough, but on the other hand, can we ask for any financial support from them for that?
Additionally to the interest-free loan, probably not. That would be the process to get access to the $65 million worth of interest-free over 10 years.
Okay.
If you know Shane Jones very well, you might.
I could try.
We managed our best to keep those costs as low as possible as well. So where we could, we leveraged other councils and their information and so forth. So there was an expectation that we would do a business case that met the standards of the government business case, a better business case, better Treasury business case, which is quite a high bar. But because we did the work, we were successful in the application. And I think the costs and compared to the value of what we received in terms of savings of interest are not unreasonable, quite low. And also so we've got the loan, which is 180 million. It also enabled us to unlock the subsidy of $110 million as well. So there's direct benefit there as well.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, just on whatever page that is.
Ziggy, can you give a page and a paragraph number?
Okay, if I can find the page, that would be just so awesome. Page 61, and it's, well, there's no paragraph. It's just with the river plan and with the theatre opening approximately 1st of July 2022. Has it always been that time, or I thought it was a year earlier? No? Was I dreaming? It's 2022. Please. I thought it was 2021. Yeah, I thought it was 2021, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2021.
It says here 2022. I just want to check that I was reading right or wrong. Yeah.
Item 10.
That's the
Item
first day
10.
of 2020, of the next year.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Leo.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around this if I can. On page 53, which is the summary of the transportation budget there, in the top paragraph you've got revenue from on-street parking is favourable at 230,000. Now, unfortunately I don't have anything to compare that with the previous year, but it seems very, very low to me, 230,000. Of course, I understood it was around about 800 to 900,000. Has this been adjusted because of the free parking, 2 hours free? And then if you go down to the second to last paragraph at the bottom, there are administrative costs. In other words, we're having to pay the court fees to lodge an information into court at 248,000. To me, it looks like nobody is actually paying any infringements. Would this be correct?
So in response to the on-street parking of 230,000, the 800,000, my understanding was the revenue that was not received by council due to the parking offering, the difference in value. And so the 230,000 was basically over and above the estimate that we anticipated for the on-street parking with the introduction of the 2 hours free.
So does that mean then that basically the 2 hours free has cost us about 600,000, is that correct?
So in the 2 hours free via council resolution impacted budgets by, I think it was around, we advised last time, I think it was about $1 million or $1 million. And so that, in terms of the offering, that was resolved by council.
Okay, so that's cost about $1 million. What about the administrative costs of when you lodge an information into court for a non-payment of an infringement? I think it's about $30 from memory. That's what it used to be. I don't know whether it still is or not. So at $30, it's still costing us $248,000 to try and recoup a $10 parking infringement. Is this correct?
I'm not fully au fait with what that cost is, but I can get that information to you.
Okay.
Angela.
Page 19, a general question actually around the capital expenditure program. You've put there under paragraphs 43 and 44, there's 2 years there to compare how the program rolls out, 2016-17 and then this year 2017-18. The big drop in March, April, May seems to be the same for both of those years, and I know if we look at sort of October, November, December, January, there's an increase in work. So I guess that do you have any comment on that? I mean, both of those, the increase around the summer months and then the decrease in the, well, kind of in the climate at the moment, it's still March, April, May is still kind of summer. Is there anything other than the normal building season that influences that? Because both years are very similar. Anyone? It's probably Chris, yes.
Yeah, probably in my new role, just to comment, it's something that we are trying to understand better and provide better information coming to council. So we're looking, we've got a report later on, which we're looking to bring much more improved information. For this year, we're doing a lot more analysis on our cash flow and our budgeting and why people are cash flowing it the way they are. We're also going to put a focus on revenue as well that we haven't had before in council. So I think what we see there is there's a lot of expenditure in the last month of the financial year. You know, and June is winter, so it's not really related to a construction season for our type of work. Like a lot of our work is not seasonal dependent, like all our renewal programs are not really seasonal dependent. But I think what we're seeing is a phenomenon of treating our program on a 1 year slice, and what we're trying to do is present you a 3-year program of works and budgeting sensibly across 3 years. So I think what you're seeing is just the way we manage projects and looking at a 1 year slice and people programming their works to finish by June of the end of the financial year, and we get that big increase in June. So it's certainly something that we're trying to understand and a lot more analysis and come back to you on that and separate out which projects are weather dependent, which aren't weather dependent, and just looking at how people are budgeting across each single month.
Yeah, look, that would be really good. Mr. Chair, I'd be really interested in seeing some at least high-level analysis at some point. Because, you know, when you look at this year, March, April and May, for those 3 months, what has been the actual, our capital projects rolled out has halved. And, you know, when the city's investing in infrastructure, it's a sure thing. We have the money, we do the work. As you say, we're not bound by any type of seasonal restriction in terms of revenue, and you know we've sort of always got money and we've always got things on the go. So
if I can just put some input into that, conversation, one of the things that you're looking at there is when we receive our invoices, and so that has no bearing on the work that's been done on the ground. And so one of the things that Chris and I are working on in terms of this new capital reporting is to actually tell the story about what is being delivered as opposed to just what invoices are being received by council.
Yeah.
So a more fuller story about the successes of what we're doing and progress, as opposed to just looking at the financial piece.
Yeah, I'll be really interested in that work. Thank you. Thanks.
Just on that, Angela, oh, sorry.
No, go.
I was just going to say on that particular topic, I've done a little bit of analysis.
Oh.
And if you look at the average, so paragraph 43, if you look at the average of the actuals, up from July through to May, the average was $7.3 million worth of expenditure per month. Then in June, we improved that by 300%. And that's just not believable, that suddenly three times as many diggers were on the ground.
Yeah.
So it must be an accounting, well, I assume it must be an accounting issue. That's
just
suddenly a whole lot
receiving-
of invoices have been coming,
receiving-
which means our reporting early has been hopeless.
I think it's a genuine issue relating to how we just use the end of the financial year as a bit of a target. So we've got a lot of very high value contracts get tendered around Christmas time, and by the time you get to June, they're really starting to hit their straps with their spending. Yeah, so there is.
So do you reckon there was actually 3 times more shovels in the ground and diggers in the ground?
Yeah,
and
but it's not all related to diggers. So there's a lot of
whatever it is, dropping of pipes in the ground.
Land transactions, for example. So you work hard on buying bits of land, and they just have they come together in June sometimes because that's the financial year you're working in. So you'll find mixed in there will be a whole load of things, not just shovels and dirt, but it'll be land and renewal projects and a whole load of things. So that's the analysis that we want to.
Okay, so are you genuinely saying that you think that what's the incentive or rationale that all your big land purchases would happen in June?
I'm not saying all land purchases.
Oh, but sorry, that is that 300% more capital was spent in the last month than the average of the other 11 months.
Yep, and if you look at the year before, it was the same sort of trend as well. So if you look at the June there, so that's the analysis we're trying to do as a capital group now, and look at how people are budgeting, and look if we take a 3-year view on delivering the program, which you'll see in our report.
What you might find is 35 months something, and they're selling the 36 months becomes 300%.
Well, it hasn't escaped council that we've got a much bigger capital program to deliver over the next 3 years, so it's really important that we understand these things and get them right.
But I guess
my concern would be that stuff was actually delivered earlier, but the paperwork didn't get completed on time.
There could be a
consequently,
there could be a component of that because part of the process is accruals, and you're heading to the end of the financial year. Have we paid all of our invoices? So you might find there is a component of that in there. But I don't think it'll be a big component. I think the big component is actually physical works being done or land being purchased.
Well, and it's also lining up progress payments for work being done, right? So we could have a lot of work being done in January, February, March, but we're not going to pay the supplier until they've completed their piece of work. So it's also lining up our contracts and our progress payments. So there's a lot of complexity in this, and this discussion just goes to show that this is insufficient information to actually understand.
Yeah.
And so the work that Chris and I are going to be doing with Councillor Rob and Councillor Mallett in a draft before we bring it back to Council or Finance Committee will bring us a better story of what's going on so that these types of hypothesising don't continue.
Rest assured, Councillor, the A-team are on it, aren't we, Rob?
Thanks for that, which is why I raised that question. Is it appropriate now to just get a high-level summary of the audit's feedback on the annual plan, or do you want to wait?
Can we finish this part, the questions first?
This is the only bit of the annual plan we have at the moment, the end-of-year financials.
There is no material update. There's no significant things being the auditors that have found that they want to discuss with us. The audit is on time, and we don't see any issues.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. Back on page 39, where you've got economic development, second bottom, professional costs. For Peacock growth cell, 768 unfavourable. So I'm taking this as unbudgeted. It was staff time and professional time for that makeup of $768,000.
That's correct.
So the Peacocks area has almost cost us $1 million before we've even turned a piece of soil. Is that correct?
So the 768 is an unfavourable number compared to the budget that we had for professional costs under economic development. The note there is saying that the majority of this relates to Peacock, and I think it was around $550,000. Signed off by council as well, yeah.
Okay. Just to be clear, James, what you're looking at there is the unfavourable variance, not the quantity that was spent. So the quantity that was spent could be way more than that, or I don't know what the quantity is that was spent. But that was sort of the question that Ziggy was asking too, I think.
Okay, and the second part there is the administration costs there, 403,000 unfavourable for. Explain this to me. The variance relates to the internal transfer of the Hamilton Gardens Cafe rental commission. Where was it internally transferred to?
To my group. So we're now getting the revenue coming directly to the operational area rather than into the strategic property area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just transferred from one area to another now?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's still there and it's doing well. That's probably the good news within council's accounts. So it's just been a different place where it's going to.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from the previous conversation regarding this rush to the end of the financial month, I appreciate you guys are working on this in terms of innovation, but I guess, and it probably doesn't happen with our City Council, but I know that sometimes there's a tendency for management to say, get your invoices in to get the sign-off, etc. So I don't know if that creates a rush, even though the work will still lag out. That happens in other industries, I'm sure. But is there also a fear from contractors that if they don't get the invoice in, the budget's going to change? And
Generally not, because if the project, well, I would say not, because the project has been approved by council and therefore the that approved amount would have contracts in place and would be paid.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. But you know, getting close to the end of the financial year, we go to all our suppliers who might be slow in raising invoices and tell them to hurry up and submit their invoice so that we can get the costs in the correct financial year.
Yeah.
So that's slow for invoices that are actually for work incurred. We don't have a situation where we have suppliers invoice us where it's not incurred. That would be a prepayment, not a liability.
Rob.
Can I just ask one more question which follows from Councillor James? The spending on Peacock, my recollection was that was again similar to the theatre, an advance on the HIF funding that we had sought, that management had sought approval from council to start spending in anticipation of the loan funds that would eventually come in if we went ahead with the HIF funding. So is that expenditure likely to be replaced with the HIF loan when the proceeds start to trickle in?
So those costs are included as the total cost of the Peacock development as part of our business case. So that's that total cost figure, and therefore the debt as it arises associates with those costs.
So we don't get any reimbursement back from the HIF loan.
It's not a case of reimbursement. That'll be part of our first application. Will include the costs we've incurred to date, which was enabled in the agreement. So
which is part of this expenditure here.
Yep.
So effectively, we've spent and expensed whatever the figure is, and we will subsequently be reimbursed for that.
Yep.
Back when the HIF money trickles in.
Well, yeah, when we make an application for the HIF money, so that's all agreed, the tranches and so forth, and when it.
And we had approval, didn't we, from MB to start that process on the basis that if we followed it through, they would.
Blair did a very good job negotiating the agreement to include the ability to claim costs already incurred, and as well as some of the pre-work that's been incurred as well. So that's been quite robust.
So wouldn't the correct accounting treatment be to capitalise that as being, I suppose, work in progress that would then be subsequently offset when the loan funds come in, probably in
But it's not
future
income,
years?
is it? The HIF fund is not income, it's a loan.
Well, it will be in our...
Just to be clear, the how something's funded doesn't dictate, which I think where Councillor Mallett's coming from, doesn't dictate whether or not it's an asset item or an expense item. And these items are considered expense, so they're relating to the underlying business case. Once items are capital or not, the funding will be associated with it, will be allocated to it, but that's irrelevant to how we determine it.
But we have expensed it in this year?
Yes.
Yep,
Costs,
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And accrued to date as well, so any other costs that we haven't received.
Sorry, I just missed...
And fully accrued to date, any costs associated with it.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I have no further speakers. I do have one. Andrew. Oh, you're moving, sorry. I'll move. Sorry, Andrew's moved. I'll second. We're now into debate. No debate? Sorry, is there a debate? Oh, beg your pardon, Rob, sorry.
I'd like to speak to the report and put it, and agree in some areas with Stephen in terms of the fact that I'm both heartened and disappointed by the results we have for this year. I'm heartened at the progress, and I think Stephen commented on that, heartened at the progress that Council has made financially over the past 6 years. And if you go back 6 years when the existing financial strategy was put in place, for the year to 30 June, we are reporting $61 million comprehensive income surplus. Back in 2012, we reported almost a $5 million loss. And irrespective of what's included in that, the measure that we use for both of those years would have been exactly the same. So the financial strategy that was put in place in 2012 has allowed this council to progress on a journey which has improved our financial situation quite strongly. And I think any suggestion that the last financial strategy was wrong is quite incorrect. In fact, it was right for the purpose of what was happening at that time, and it allowed council to actually start showing surpluses. Even when we look at our balancing the books measures, and the two worst measures that we've got this year is the 3.9 million shortfall using the local government measure, and the $5.5 million shortfall using what we call our new measure, the 2018 measure. If we start to strip back some of the expenditure over the year, and I think here of the free CBD parking, the lost revenue from revision of our catering contracts, the costs of the REAP study, the grants that we've already, partial grant that we've already made on the theatre, the HIF spending that we've already done, we're almost coming back to a break-even position because these are new expenditures or costs or lost revenue, which is the result of decisions that have been made during this council. So that kind of leads me now to what I think is the disappointing side, and that is since March 2017, we've told the marketplace that the city is facing financial crisis, that we've had regular investigations to suggest that a deficit that was reported to this council in March 2000, an annual deficit which was reported to this council back in March of 2017 was $11 million a year, and that over that time since March 2017, the annual deficit has steadily grown upwards to almost $46 million per year, which was reported at a finance meeting a couple of meetings ago. All of these predictions, of course, lacked evidence, and I think what we're seeing today in the financial report that's been presented is that these estimates were significantly wrong, and I think that what concerns me is that we went to the marketplace, told the residents this is what was happening, and we've secured a fairly substantial rate increase to help cover what we thought were significant deficits. We were also told during the long-term process long-term planning process that the city had borrowed $48 million to fund these deficits in the past. When I look at city debt as at June of 2012, we owed $385 million. This year, in this report, we're told at the 30th of June, our debt was $371 million. Now, I know that there's a lot of things happening in that loan balance, but for the life of me, I would challenge anyone around this table to show me where council has borrowed $48 million to fund day-to-day deficits. Going forward from the 1st of July, we have a new financial strategy, and we have a council, from my observation, where the majority of councillors sitting around this table support spending at levels that have been unprecedented in recent years. We all heard the Mayor's I Have a Dream speech at the last council meeting, followed then by an eagerness and urgency to get on with borrowing money, which will allow us to, or get us to, that target of $800 million projected in the long-term plan. In terms of wrapping this up, because I know I've run out of time, I urge all of council to get up to speed on the new financial strategy, to question staff and make yourself aware of the fiscal tightrope that this council will work through over the next few years. Ongoing rate increases and higher debt levels will be of concern, and careful management and fiscal control will be necessary if we are to achieve outcomes for our residents. Mark.
I'll just be really brief. I just want to talk to one point about this, and I'm in a very positive sense. I'm quite excited about the idea of our new way of reporting and predicting our capital spend over a longer period as opposed to just one. I mean, it's the elephant in the room. We all know use it or lose it by June, and I hope this will flatten out that bump, which will make it a lot easier on everybody, and I think it will actually result in some really kind of cool savings. The difficulty we have with it is that councils are elected in every 3 years, and so that does leave us vulnerable during a change of council around changes of strategy, etc. But I think that's going to be a good thing.
Thanks, Mark. All right. I will... Oh, you want to speak? You want to speak or move? Okay, sorry. Andrew, sorry.
If you want to hold rates down and have a city which, when I took over as mayor, with a broken theatre, a broken pool complex and a broken library, with our sewage pipes so full that the sewage spews out on the ground when we get heavy rain because we haven't maintained and haven't upgraded as we should have and held things back. When we get a PwC report that confirms that we borrowed $48 million to fund deficits, which is one of the top 4 or 5 accounting companies in the world, and if that was wrong, they could be sued. If you want to promise that you can hold rates down and hold the city back and break what we have and what we've got, that's, to me, a ludicrous situation. And you don't have to be particularly bright to work out what's happened, just looking in from the outside without even understanding books. But the reports have been done. It's a 12-month process to get to here from the last annual plan, where there's a realisation around this table that things weren't right, that we're counting development levy fees as incomes, and we've reversed that out now, that we weren't reporting in a model that was suitable. We set up a small working group of some of the best brains around this table to set the new parameters for the new way we report. And my good friend, the last speaker, made the recommendations for how we report going forward. So to sit here and try and wind it back out, criticise and try and wind out the money that we needed to make the city run properly just doesn't hold water for me. I'd rather we report in a more conservative way, and we sit around this table and we see where the city's really going with their finances and with their spending, than sit here with having a financial model which actually masked the truth of where we were going and what was happening to our city. I would have thought that this discussion would have been put behind us after the 10-year plan. But here we are with the first finance meeting since, and we're right back into it again. This doesn't make sense, guys. The majority of this council voted to bring this new model through, and we need to move forward united and take the city and run it properly and look after what we've got.
Thank you. Okay, I think that myself and Andrew have already moved and seconded this. Okay. All right, so Mallet King or King Mallet, which way is it? King Mallet sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. Could that be taken down? So which way was it? King Mallet. It is right, okay. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Okay, carried unanimously, thank you. Now moving on to item 8, page 70. 10-year performance report.
Mr. Chair, elected members. I'm on. Mr. Chair, elected members, I take the report as read. This is the year-end results from the third year of the 2015 to 25 10-year plan. We achieved 53 of our 10-year plan performance measures. We did not achieve 19, and we have not reported on 5 of those measures due to no data or data issues. That is a slight change from what is written in your report, because I have 2 verbal updates. Indicator number 38, the number of street trees planted, has changed. It is now at 420 street trees planted. 28 were planted by council and 392 were planted by developers. We've also, and this is where the change comes to the number that we have reported on, indicator number 41, the number of playable hours on our sports fields. That has been changed to no data due to a recommendation from audit.
Is that why the 54 became 53, is it?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. So paragraph 4, the first bullet point should be 53, not 54.
Correct, and then the third bullet point should be 5, not 4.
Oh, sorry, okay. Thanks, Katie. Are you finished? Okay. Dave?
Yeah, just questions on the methodology here, really, and I raised this at recent Audit and Risk Committee meeting for the same reason. We've got either green or red situations here, when there are clearly some things that are red, that are all listed as red dots, and I'll give you an example, a couple of things I want to comment, that have been so close to being met that it seems ludicrous to account them as not having been met, in other words, as a fail. So I take, for example, on page 82, Democracy Services, we've got a percentage on 75, which is the Official Information Act request responded to within 20 working days, of 99.1. It's a fail. Now,
it's only a fail by arithmetic, I think, not a fail in actual practice when you look at the reasons. So I'm thinking that going forward, is there an opportunity, I'm asking you, whether to have a system that says, for instance, and we've done this in this council in the past, if you're within 5% of the target, it's not a red, it's an orange. It's something that needs attention, but it's not a fail, not counted as a fail. So that's the question. And another specific one, the same area, I might as well ask at the same time, number 77 down the bottom. There were 5 council meetings where late reports came in. Now, I'd suggest to you that those should not be counted as a fail unless it was the staff's fault or governance, democracy services fault that they didn't come in, because I'm aware that at least some of those were as a result of councillors, elected members, the mayor and councillors, adding late items or external forces causing late items to come up. So I don't believe if that was the reason, and it's not clear here, it just says 5 were one request from staff, but not staff in democracy, that's staff elsewhere in council. You know, it just doesn't seem like those sort of things should be counted as a fail. In that particular circumstance, they should actually be greens, and the fail should be on the people that caused the fail. Is there an orange capability in future?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So yes, so we do, as we're tracking through the year or over the course of 3 years, we do note some of the measures in orange where we signify those as needing action. So we do that through the course of the year. And I think the other point around that example.
Sorry, why are we not getting them now then?
So I think there are some in here which are actually shown as yellow.
They're so small, I couldn't see the colour.
But we're also now at the end of the 3-year term for the 2015 10-year plan. So we have now reached this is the 12th quarter of 12 that we're reporting on the 2015 plan measures. And so we're at the point now where the results are the results.
But hang on, sorry, this is saying this report is just for the 1 year, 2017-18.
Yes, but the measures that we put in place for that year were set in the 2015 10-year plan, and so it's the finish of the year. This is reporting on the end of the year now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't understand why a 99.1% isn't an orange. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, you're kind of dead or alive, aren't you?
Yeah, and
no, you could be half pregnant, didn't you know?
Can I just make a comment, please? Sorry, might help. I can confirm that Leanne and I have actually reviewed the measures for the next 10-year plan, so they will be slightly different, which will enable us to not fail because of those things that we can't control. So they have been changed for the next period going forward.
There's always going to be a boundary issue when you say you go from dead to alive or pregnant to not pregnant, and you've got to just put a mark in the ground so that you have certainty or clarity as to where that is. Otherwise, you will forever be moving in the fringes.
No, I'm suggesting that you identify what's fringe and what's not, and that you do have to...
But even that will require a boundary.
Yes,
when do you go from certainty to fringe to total uncertainty?
Some things look nonsensical, though, when they come out as either black or white, when there's grey, shades of grey, 50 shades of grey at least.
Yeah, can I also add just a comment on your second question, Dave, which was around where it's something's been caused by councillors rather than staff. Effectively, I mean, these are really the council reporting to the public on how we're doing. So regardless of whether something is caused by staff or caused by council, this isn't about staff reporting to elected members on how we as staff have done. This is the council effectively reporting to the community on how the council has done.
I can appreciate that, but the way it's presented is like a failure of that group of or section of council staff. that I guess is, you know, what you're saying is right when you look at it holistically with everything added in together.
So with the annual report, Sean, do we acknowledge the reasons for missing that target? Because we report on these in the annual report.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so to Councillor Dave's point, we should make sure that the right reasons are actually noted there as well.
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
there's not a view that one particular group which had no responsibility aren't tarnished with that impact, which is I think the point that Dave's trying to get across.
Yep. Noted.
Yep. Thanks.
Will it name the councillor who...
Oh, the chair that was late with one report was probably me. Or it might have been the one that you caused all that trouble with.
That never got to the gate. That was shot in the stockyards. Okay, I was going to call you Henry, sorry. Siggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. I've just got a question, and just going back to democracy services. Can we add on, I remember from Councillor O'Leary right at the start of our term that she asked for the reports to come to us earlier, so at least 5 working days that you asked for? And could that be added in that column somewhere there to, or is this just for the, as a measure as well, that we can measure that as well, that could happen?
So this is reporting on the targets that were already set.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not, we're not capturing.
Yeah.
Changing.
No, I mean for the future. Okay. Well, so we could look at that at some stage. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Siggy. Rob.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions on some of the red dots. Under 43 on page 77 about the gardens and the decrease in the number of people attending the gardens and possible reasons for that. Have we put in place any mitigation to change the potential perception here that people might not be going to the gardens because they think they might be charged when they hit the entrance?
Not specifically, but I think Council's decision through the LTP's been reported reasonably widely in the media. So talking to Peter and Tamsin at the Gardens, they're reasonably confident that the community sort of
the numbers are returning to normal
over
again.
that. Yeah, the numbers have increased and looking similar to previous years. So I think that's just a blip. The other thing that was mentioned in there, I know this sounds a bit weird, but the exceptionally hot early summer, we believe actually affected figures too, because we actually get a lot of people who are a bit more mature going to the gardens, and they found the heat was, it was quite, we're getting 30 degrees last October and November, so the anecdotal feedback we had that some people had deferred visits just because of the heat.
Okay, thank you. On the next page,
an Englishman.
on the next page, and I'm just turning it over, and it's item 34 on page 76. I'm going backwards, about the rubbish and recycling collectors, and I guess we all get from time to time complaints about, messes that are left in streets and uncollected rubbish and so forth. The contractor states here that there were resourcing challenges. Are they ongoing, the resourcing challenges, or were they just a short-term blip?
Yeah, they are ongoing. There was quite a spike in turnover of staff around the time that there was a lot of civil works being done, because they were basically, the drivers were being sort of attracted to other industries. So, but it is an ongoing challenge, but it is rectified through the new contract, where they will be, instead of being contractors to our contractor or subcontractors, they will be directly employed by our contractor.
So that's my next question. The new contract should help us mitigate against some of the issues that we've had with the existing one.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And my last question is around the footpaths, and I know that we've discussed this. This is on, I think, page 75. Item number 30 about the footpaths, and I know we've discussed this at past meetings in terms of the cost of maintenance and so forth, but are we reasonably confident that the new funding will have sufficient in it to, again, like the rubbish, this is one that we get feedback on from residents. Are we confident that we're going to be able to speed up maintenance on our footpaths going forward, given that we should have additional funding through rate increases and so forth?
So in terms of the additional funding, it gives us the ability to prioritise and actually rectify the issues in terms of the footpaths that have been identified as needing repair. So the additional funds, yes, definitely puts us in a good position.
Do you know offhand how much additional funding you've got in the budget for the footpath maintenance?
It was I believe, not exactly, but it's around 2 to 2.4 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the total, or that's the additional amount?
That is additional.
Thank you.
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years, yep, thank you.
No, it's annual.
Thanks.
It was per year.
Oh, 2.4 per year additional.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank
So
you.
24 million,
Yes.
roughly.
And you'll confirm that?
And I will confirm that.
When? Just don't let her sit down. Every time she sits down, I was going to ask another question. What colour paper will it be? Okay, Mark.
I seem to ask this every time these dots and colours come up. But
you don't have to.
I haven't kind of been satisfied with the answer yet. But when do we actually sit down and write these criteria? Do we do that? Because every time I seem to find these ones like number 27, the council will invest in making biking safer, and the measure is fewer deaths. It's not actually whether we invested in making biking safer or not. That's the output. And I know it sounds finicky, but we're always going to fail if we ask a question and look for a different answer. So when do we sit down and do this?
In the 10-year plan. So you have, for the 2018 10-year plan, that includes the performance measures for the next 3 years.
So have we done it?
It's in the 10-year plan. So council adopted the
10-year plan, yeah.
The new measures in the March meeting, I think it was, 27th of March. So we had a briefing on it. Then we had a reference group gave some feedback into those, and then the council adopted them on the 27th of March.
Okay, so is it once every 3 years we get to do that, basically?
Yes, you can change them in the annual plan.
Right. Okay. All right. No, that's cool. Thank you.
Dave.
Yeah, just following that, I wasn't the only councillor that heard Mark's question and was looking puzzled. Both the question made us start thinking, and even more so at the answer. I think, given, I'm just asking for maybe a...
Just be clear what you mean.
When Mark asked, when do we sit down and work out these targets?
Okay.
When did that happen? How did it slip through? It might have been another way of putting it. So I'm wondering whether, through you, we can ask management to just give us the opportunity, maybe in a workshop before the annual plan comes up, to have a look at them, because I'm aware of in some of the ones in the G&I area, I've never seen them before, and that sounds like it was my fault, but there was also sounds like there was, if it was in March, there was so much else going on that I'm not surprised. There's probably a whole lot of other things like that. So what I'm asking is an opportunity just to touch base with some of those things. When Becca talked before about the democracy services ones that you and Leanne have come up with, I don't recall us having that discussion anywhere either. So where is it? And let's not worry about what's happened in the past. Let's find a place.
So I think Sean just said the process will be that we still have to do an annual plan for 2018. Is that right?
No, he said we can look at it then. It's not scheduled.
So I guess the can becomes we will, I suppose.
Yeah. So the first year of the 10-year plan is what we're in now. The annual plan kind of kicks in for the next financial year, but we can review those performance measures then. So what I'll do is perhaps after this meeting I'll circulate the measures and the process that we did go through, just for clarity, and then I'll also set out the process or potential process for how we kind of can look at those sort of going forward. If that's okay.
So what's the formal process that you will go through? That'll come back to what? A workshop and then a resolution?
Yep, so I'll bring those back to a workshop.
Okay.
And then if we can bring those back to if and when we do the annual plan, when we do the annual plan, I should say, we can bring that back as part of the annual plan process.
Okay.
So that'll be a formal process.
Thank you. Ryan.
Thanks. And just following from Dave's, I guess you'll liaise with governance and that new model and how it's all going to marry together?
Yep, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll move that the Finance Committee receives the report. Mallet, Casson, those in favour, those against, sorry, I should have asked, was there any debate? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to item 9, page 85, Capital Portfolio Report, which I think has been alluded to previously in this meeting.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So with me is Natalie Young, who's our Project Management Officer. So Natalie's joined my group this year to work on the capital program. So she's going to have all of the answers to all of those questions that you raised earlier on today in the fullness of time. So
immediately kicked for touch.
It's called collaboration and working together, yeah.
It's called Grant Fox.
Hey, so this is just a brief update report to just reflect on a previous report to council. So in June we went to council and the chief executive alerted to the fact that he was developing this group to just have a better focus on delivery of our capital program. We've indicated in that report that we would have a full capital report to you in the first quarter, so at the Finance Committee meeting of 16th of October 2018. So we are looking to substantially alter the way that we just report to you on capital. So in the meantime, we have been just establishing our group and establishing our reporting requirements for reporting capital. We're at a point in time, one of your resolutions was to work with the chair and deputy chair of this committee prior to bringing the reporting to council. So we're at the point in time now where we're ready to start those conversations in September in terms of what we think the reporting would look like and just test that through the chair and deputy chair. We're currently working with David Bryant and the corporate team to wrap the financial strategy aspects around the capital program delivery. So that's the bit we're working on at the moment is here's what the capital looks like, but what impact and push and pull has it got on the financial strategy. So look, it was a good discussion in the previous report and you'll see in this report that there are some of the items that we've already identified as an area for improvement in coming reporting to council in terms of some more analysis on our data and our budgeting and what's going on. So look, we'll progressively report through to Finance Committee. The next report to Finance Committee will have a lot more detail prior to the first quarter report. So look, I'm happy to answer any questions related to this report.
Chris, can you just give us some high-level differences from that this report will have from the current report? Because there is I have a concern, and I appreciate you have given me some small, short briefings, and I've had talks with Richard, and I think everyone's had a little bit of a entree into this thing. But you know, there's a potential that it just 3 years just gets what we now look at in 1 year just becomes 3 years all tied in together and with no greater clarity.
Look, I think you'll find there's a lot more clarity and it'll still be a 1 year view, but in the context of a 3 year view. I think probably the biggest change is if you go to page 88 in the attachment to the report. So you're probably used to staff coming up and reporting by activity, and this is what it's looking like in the water, this is what it's looking like in the wastewater, this is what it's looking like in the stormwater, this is what it's looking like in the roads, and this is what it's looking like in the parks. So we want to take a program approach where we come back and tell you about our integrated capital program for Rota Tuna, for example. So, you know, every time we build a road, we bury pipes under there, and it's an integrated look at the view. And your concern is probably more about, are we completing the roads that will allow the school to expand, etc., and how's that interrelating with some of the community infrastructure? So we just want to take a different approach and talk to our capital program through the lens, I guess, of those programs, which is a bit more geographical and a bit more meaningful for, we think, for you and the community, but
So
not losing the integrity of reporting against activities and budgets and yearly budgets and annual budgets.
So that capital, that attachment 1 on page 88 has a big figure, you know, under renewals, under Peacock, Rotuna. So so for example, for renewals, it's 244 million, and presumably that's the 82 million there is the first year, the 80 million is the second year, and the 81 is the third year.
Correct. And,
Okay.
and so we want to, and if you take,
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry.
And so that envelope, that whole, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns.
Yep.
That's our entire capital. That is the portfolio, huh? And it's broken down kind of by location, except for renewals, rather than by don't know the right word.
Activity.
Yeah, activity. Yeah. So it's not road building. It's not stormwaters. It's not parks. It's not buildings. It's by the region in our city where the work is being done.
Correct.
So that's a big change in the way it's.
It's quite a big change, and we think it'll be a really positive change in terms of being able to talk to our community what we're actually doing with our capital program and how we're building communities. You know, rather than talking about a road, it's what place is that road and building that community, and how does it fit. And by the way, there's pipes underneath it, and there's parks alongside it.
So having got that, on page 86, there's a real doozy of a sentence, paragraph 14. And maybe that is how you describe what we've just looked at. The portfolio management structures have been reviewed and realigned to reflect the spatially defined cross-organisational delivery model. Is that what that is? Is that what that means?
Yep, that's PMO jargon, which is better than engineering jargon.
So we still have a Department of Fantasy Works in this place, don't we?
Yep, so but that's exactly what we said, like spatial just means geographical location. So we're talking about Rota Tuna in the spatial sense. We're not talking by activity, which is just disjointed transport projects across the whole city. We're going to break it down into geographical areas that have meaning to the community.
And maybe this is too much detail to have here, because I don't think we're just receiving a report, so there's not an awful lot. And at the workshop, but this sort of portfolio approach has been tried and works, and you can give us examples of why it would work and where it has worked?
Yep. And look, there's nothing magic about it. Like, portfolio just means our whole program of capital, and then we break it into those programs, which are shown in the diagram, and then we break down to individual projects and activities. So it's just how we present it in a program approach. So it is a standard project management approach, and that's the skill and discipline that Natalie brings to the new group, and all the disciplines around that, and how we manage the projects, how we manage scope, how we manage dollars. Sitting on top of this as well is there's two big challenges to the group. One is to align us as an organisation to deliver our program or our contract with the community. The second...
What do you mean by align?
Align infrastructure
Because
with
we
parks
try and
open
deliver to our
spaces
community
with,
now too, don't we?
Yeah, but align ourselves internally, to align ourselves externally as well with other partners that might be building things, NZTA and all sorts of other partners. So just better alignment to deliver a big program.
Okay.
But also the second part is finding ways to deliver it more efficiently as well. So that's the second part of my group's existence, to find better ways to deliver stuff.
Because there's two things we need to know. A, we need to have visibility, and that's all about reporting.
Yeah.
But secondly, we need to be confident in execution.
Yep.
So you know, you can spend, you can reporting, you can do all sorts of fancy things and bullet, what do you call those, PowerPoint presentations and Department of Fantasy Words and all that sort of stuff. But you know, it's all about execution that really matters to the public, the people we serve. So we want to see that. We get more reliable roads, cheaper, less expensive roads. Cheaper roads is the wrong word to say, but you know, it's infrastructure that's built on time, at a reasonable cost, going to last the life it's supposed to last.
Yeah, look, exactly like just as a general statement, I think the focus in the past of this committee has been on carryovers and spending money by the end of the financial year, rather than I think on things like we committed to start 20 projects this year. How many did we start? We committed to finish 20 projects this year. How many did we finish? How many projects were under budget? How many projects were over budget? So that's the type of analysis we want to bring back to council, is more of that rather than did we spend all of our money by the end of the financial year. With all due respect, we get that now. You know, we've got carryovers and we're told what projects didn't get finished or what parts of projects get finished, and that's relatively.
Yep. So I'm just going to jump in. So basically, there's a question earlier about where we're at with projects and what gets done in that the 3 months of, was it April, March, whatever they were. So basically, one of the things that I've asked Chris to look at, I'm sure I told him this, but otherwise he's getting the instructions now. Effectively our asset program pipeline as well as our lockup. So the challenge we've got is by which time should we have had our contractors committed to and so forth to ensure that we hit our dates. So that's about making sure we've got all our business planning in place, our business cases in place, our contracts negotiated and entered into, the tenders undertaken and so forth. So we can basically set targets, that good practices that you've got. You know, if you want to hit June or you want to hit May, you've got to have it locked up in terms of a contract within 4 months of that, prior to that, and so forth. So, but
you know that nothing's different from
you've said what's changed in terms of the way we report. That will be what we report to you guys to give, and the community, to give them confidence that we're hitting the mark on these things. So it won't be at the moment we communicate to you guys almost in hindsight the fact that we hit this date. Why did you miss it? Or you missed that date. Why did you miss that date? Well, these things happened way back then. With a greater level of certainty, we'll be able to communicate way back then, given these issues or whatever's happened, it's highly likely for these reasons more comprehensively that we're going to miss those dates. And the other point that Chris has made, taking a 3-year approach, enables us, if there's an external factor over here managing an impact on this project, we can then, because we've done all the work in other areas, and with clarity and transparently, we can manage in other areas as well. So one of the advantages of setting the group up is the work that Natalie does is world class. The project and portfolio management work we do isn't from the Department of Fantasy Words. It is actually well respected philosophy and theory internationally, and that's something we've been doing and growing in for the last 2 years, but we want to hit it really hard now, because I challenged Chris to shave a significant amount of money out of the capital program, deliver it on time, deliver it to the right quality to the community, but do it for less. And that is a big challenge that he is sitting there squirming in his seat, because every time he talks to me I increase the percentage of his savings target. And so that's the challenge as well. So that is absolutely, I've told him everything that we report to council gets reported to the community, live, real-time information, so anyone in the community can interrogate it at any time. It doesn't have to come to council either. It's going to be there and then for the community to look at as well, which is another challenge I've given to Chris as well. Did I tell you that one?
If I can,
I'm listening and writing it down.
Let me also add, given that the report's going to be developed in conjunction with Chris and I, and you two, very experienced individuals, we're pretty, and Chris is really excited about those challenges, by the way.
Thank you for that, David.
A key element here that is different from last year is the financial strategy and the way we've constructed it. So our debt to revenue is very important to us, and we know that in years 3 through 7 we are quite close to the 230%. That means that whilst we have flexibility through this 3-year process in terms of when we do what capital project, if you like, whatever makes sense, we also have to keep our eye on that 230%. So the capital report will have with it a financial strategy piece of analysis to make sure that any decisions in terms of flexing within that program still helps us in terms of maintaining that benchmark of 230%. So there'll be a lot of differences that you'll see going forward, especially how that funnels through to our monitoring reporting, and also the Finance Committee. We may start the committee with an overview of the financial strategy in terms of what the actuals are to date and what that impact is on the financial strategy. So there's a lot of linkages that we're building at the moment, and I think it's going to allow councillors to have much more transparency in terms of our financial position and performance, and what we're forecasting to do.
Thanks, David. Angela.
Thank you. I'm struggling a little bit to understand, even after all of that great conversation, exactly what this report is going to give me as an elected member in terms of more transparent information, let alone now I understand this is going to be a public-facing document as well. My preference would be then that before a draft document comes to the committee, that it's either circulated via email. I know that our briefings are getting a bit full towards the end of the year, because with all due respect, Mr. Chair, if this is going to be a public-facing document and something that's I'm hearing is going to be giving us a lot more transparency in a portfolio way, so of peacocks and rototuna and what's happening on the ground and the opportunities that are coming, I cannot stress enough that that needs to be plain English, because I'm a little bit lost right now. I thought I knew what this was going to be. I think it's a great idea. Anyway, that would be my preference, that before it came to a committee that the elected members had a bit of a look at it. Is there anything on...
And Angela, just on that, as opposed to anything else in here, because this report just came the same way every other report has to be given to people how many days before the meeting.
But this is a new way of reporting, and often we get a surprise in the agenda, a new way of reporting, and then elected members are saying, I don't understand this, what if perhaps it should have, this information or that information. And because this is public facing as well, which is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, look, we can certainly do that, and we'll work with the chair and deputy chair about how we socialise it with councillors prior to the report.
Rather than trying to design a report by committee. I mean, this is a very high level view, and I think, look, the points that are on page 85 about some of the things that the report will take into account are good, very good actually. So is there anything on the list on page 88 under the portfolio breakdown, which is fairly common sense to have it? I mean, growth is our major, that's our only really thing, our major spend in the capital project program. Is there anything that is not on this list that will not come under this report? I don't think so, given you've got renewals and compliance as separated.
No, the only thing I'll look to Natalie is our IT capital. Is that program in there? Yeah, so we've got that under renewals and compliance. So this should be everything that's capital will be in one of these programs.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And it should be a match to our 10-year plan.
Yeah.
What did you say then about IT?
So some of our IT program is capital as well. So in terms of the whole capital portfolio, we've got to be careful to report on that as well.
And you said regulatory compliance or something, didn't you?
Renewals.
Renewals. Sorry. So it's in that column there.
Yeah, it's in the blue column.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Angela.
So this new report will give us a level of accountability that we haven't in detail. It's the detail that's coming, isn't it?
I think there'll be improved accountability. I think there's always been good accountability, but it's been a little bit hard to penetrate sometimes. So I think this will be hopefully in a way that's just a bit more meaningful for you. And
it'll tell a better story, right?
Yeah. And the staff, what is the development group? So you're the lead, Chris, on the whole. This is your new.
So my infrastructure group has got split into two. So Eva Lisa is heading up the infrastructure operations, and I'm heading up the development. So that's still all of the work in water and roads perspective to work with our development community and growing the community, but also accountability for the whole capital program as well, not just pipes and roads, but accountability for the whole program. So working with Lance's group and Sean's group and enveloping their projects into this structure and reporting on that.
And when you talk about in the report, you talk about that Paul Gower is going to be heading up the asset strategy team.
Yep.
So that's
So
that's looking after the asset management plans. Is that what that is?
Yes. So Paul has not been formally brought into my team. The report is trying to say, but he's a really important person in the organisation to manage the blue box on page 88, which is the renewals and compliance. So he is already leading up our asset management centre of excellence and working with all of our activity managers, all 16 of them, to just align and get consistency and be really good at asset management. A lot of the asset management is capital, like all renewals is capital, and you've got maintenance, which is not capital. So there's a really big part of what Paul does that has a big influence on the capital program. So we have set up the group to have a relationship with Paul and all of those asset managers so we can just capture what they're doing and report on it.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I'll move the recommendation. James, is there any debate? Okay, I will put the recommendation, Mallet, Casson, those in favour, those against. Is there anyone against? Okay, that's carried unanimously. And I suggest we might have, you ready for a smoko now, or you want to? Yep. So we're coming back to HCC's draft response to Three Waters survey. So, sorry, is there people here? Were you here to speak to something, Cliff? Which, the weather tight. We had moved that to later in the meeting anyway. Sorry, which you obviously hadn't been advised of. My apologies. You what?
you.